Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to another random review. Today we go back to 1969 and Z, or Z, or La Orgia del Potere. This is an Italian DVD. This is one of the more famous world cinema films, even though it's not that widely available. It's in the Criterion Collection on DVD only. Not really sure why it's not on Blu-ray. There is a German Blu-ray with no English subtitles, and there's a Spanish Blu-ray with English subtitles. But the Criterion should really release this in Blu-ray. I know these things are political in themselves, what films get Blu-rays and what doesn't. This stars Yves Montand, Irene Pappas and Jean-Louis Trintignant, amongst another hosts of familiar faces. If you've seen any Italian Years of Lead films or any French films in the 60s and 70s, Jacques Perrin, Charles Denner, Francois Perret, amongst others. Directed by Costa Gavras even, who is Greek, even although he kind of made films everywhere else. The only other Costa Gavras film that I've seen is Missing, which is obviously fantastic. I really need to see State of Siege, which is available in Criterion Blu-ray and DVD. But this is a masterpiece, I would say. Again, masterpiece is thrown around far too much in our business, the same as genius. But this is 120 odd minutes, and it absolutely flies by. It's riveting throughout. So there's a wonderful introduction that says, any similarities to anything that happened in real life is purely intentional. So this is based on a novel of an incident that happened in Greece, where there was an assassination of a political leader. Also, this is 1969, so the Kennedy assassinations have been, and Martin Luther King and lots of other people. And this is a not too shrouded in mystery recreation of what happened to this leader in Greece. There is a scene in the film where protesters paint the letter Z or Z in the street, and in the extras in this we actually see the newsreel footage of that happening in Greece. Interestingly, it's a French-Algeria co-production, which it did raise a smile. We open the film with somebody in a conference room talking about mildew and plants, and then we're introduced to lots of military staff, lots of ministers of the interior and army staff, lots of colonels, and they talk about the mildew of society and the danger of all these isms coming into their country. Again, the country in the film is not named. And they talk about people with long hair coming in with their isms. And we get to see this group that's planning to give a talk by their leader, who's played by Yves Montand, who's fantastic. And they are now going round all the places that they had booked to do this talk, and of course they're all now cancelled because suddenly their safety inspections aren't up to snuff. So they end up taking this little hall that only holds like 200 people in a city of 500,000. But they're going to arrange some speakers out in the street and around some trees outside the building to try and get their message to a larger amount of people. And we see the members of that group, and again they're kind of a non-violent group, and all they want to do is pretty much say ban the bomb. You know, it's something as outlandish as that. You know, because most people with a brain cell say kind of nuclear weapons aren't a good thing, but obviously the people in power don't like that sort of attitude. We should embrace nuclear bombs, perhaps not literally. So the speech happens, and then inevitably something happens to the leader, and then the rest of the film is the investigation into what happened, led by Jean-Louis Trintignant, who is very cerebral and super cool. He spends most of the film in brownish shades of spectacle, not makeup. And he seems to be the only person who isn't kind of coerced. He's going into this eyes wide open, but there's the kind of the official story, and then he digs deeper and he finds perhaps what the authorities say happened maybe isn't necessarily what actually happened, and just more and more pressure is put upon him, and more things come to light that perhaps don't agree with the official party line. And that's where I'll leave it as far as the plot. Again, it's a famous film, even though it perhaps hasn't been seen for a while. This DVD's from 2016. I'm not sure when the Spanish and German Blu-rays are from. You could almost argue there's a conspiracy going on for you not to watch this film, because you might get ideas that governments are bad, and governments kind of change events to suit their own way of thinking. It is bizarre, the fact that lots of countries around the world essentially execute their own leaders, execute journalists, execute anybody they want, and the general public just sits and takes it. We let these people get away with murder, literally. We accept that governments are corrupt. We accept that politicians are corrupt and don't actually have our interests at heart when they're supposed to have our interests at heart. They're only interested in paying the 1% that controls the 99% of the wealth, rather than the 99% who controls 1% of the wealth. But we happily watch TikTok and swipe on Tinder instead of doing stuff about the government, because again, we all have these things. We all have mobile phones and families and children, and all the government has to do is say, well, we'll take away these things if you make too much trouble, and we all go, oh, all right, that's fine then, you just covertly kill who you like that don't agree with you, and we'll pretend it's all accidental. this film is still relevant. Again, it should be widely seen, but as I said, it's a film it's difficult to get your hands on, and that really shouldn't be the case. I really need to see more. Costa Gavras, as I said, Missing is fantastic. I need to see State of Siege. I have seen Betrayed, one of his American films that he did. Yeah, I'm not sure how many actual Greek films that he made before, as I said, going to other countries. Again, I'm not going to talk too much about the events in the film and the plot in the film, but again, it's about, obviously, how governments and people in power can get away with stuff that everyday people can't get away with. It's about the exploitation of the poor for the ends of far more powerful people. You know, there's kind of working class people that are told, oh yeah, we'll pay off your debts if you do this for us. And again, even that small amount of money to pay off a car or, you know, help your family out, that's enough for people to agree to do terrible things, while the people in power, that money that they give that person to do this thing is like a drop in the ocean. I mean, it's interesting that it does have actually pretty good extras. There's a conversation with Costa Gavras, with Montand and Jacques Perrin, who co-produced the film as well, and Jean-Louis Trintignant, and some of them say, you know, Costa Gavras himself says, oh yeah, it's not a political film, but if you want to read it like that, then that's fine. Whereas Yves Montand is definitely saying, you know, I took this role because it is such a political film. The same way with Trintignant, you know, Gavras just says, you know, it's just a man's story. It just so happens to be he's the leader of a political group. I mean, again, they're not saying, you know, at the start they talk about the moral and social mildew with their, you know, their fluid sex things and their long hair and their radical views. But then when you actually see the group, it's like, yeah, we just want nuclear weapons stopped. So it's not that radical, their views, really. And again, we also see the power of the press, the manipulation of the press. Again, it is like a Years of Lead film, but without the kind of genre or pulp filmmaking, not in a bad way, but it's not a genre or pulp filmmaking, Years of Lead. This is far more cerebral. Remember when films like this were made where you actually had to pay attention to dialogue, and you know, you didn't have the dialogue really low in the mix and then sound effects or music really high in the mix. It's a wonderful film. Again, it's one of the shortest 2-hour films that you'll see. It does fly by, and it's got great performances. A really nice underrated score. And Gavras, certainly in the films that I've seen, he's not really bothered about being flashy with the camera. It's a kind of very meat and potatoes way of shooting, a kind of semi-documentary way of shooting, if you like. It's the same in Missing. You know, there's no artful shot compositions and things like that. There's some nice shots, but again, it's more about the character and more about the story and more kind of subtle camera movement. It's very kind of similar to the cinema of Chabrol. There's not a lot of showy, oh, I'm the director moments. It lets the story and lets the characters literally do the talking. It's just marvellous. Hopefully, as I said, there's a Spanish Blu-ray with English subtitles, but hopefully we get a really nice boutique. Well, as in the Criterion Collection, the DVD. Yeah, absolutely amazing. Again, I'm becoming more and more of an Yves Montand fan. He's been fantastic in everything I've seen, and of course Jean-Louis Trintignant. You can never have enough Jean-Louis Trintignant. So thanks very much for watching this random review of Z or Z or He's Alive from 1969. Please let me know if you've seen it and what you think of it, and hopefully you'll join me again for more random reviews. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films saying farewell.